Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for being with us today to evaluate your foreign transcripts. And I'm not going to speak to that because I am definitely not an expert or even know anything about it, quite honestly. So I am Desiree Alexander. You can sign up for my newsletter on my website, educatoralexander.com. Or if you go to sign in, you can sign up there as well. The only people that will be signing in are people that need certificates. So if you need a certificate of attendance, you will sign in. But the only people that sign in are people who are here live. So if you're watching the recording, thank you for joining us. Get some really good information, but the only certificates go out to people who are here live. So I'm Desiree Alexander. I am the founder CEO of Educator Alexander Consulting. And I see some of the names. We have some repeat people that have been to other webinars. Thank you for joining us again. These are all of the ways that you can contact me. Even if you're interested in doing a webinar, reach out. We're almost every week now doing a webinar. So definitely reach out. We would love to have you. These are some future webinars. Tech You Can Do, Intro to Google Apps. This has been a super duper popular one because usually you have to pay for all these intro classes. So for 2 hours, Sarah Kiefer is giving us information. So she just did a Google Sheets one yesterday. That was amazing. It's on the YouTube channel. Tomorrow will be Google Docs. So you can sign up for all of these 2 hours, intro to these Google apps. And then we have American Sign Language, another class that you usually either have to pay for or have to go find random YouTube videos. So come learn how to sign language, how to start sign language on Saturday. And then we have a whole bunch more. Classroom management, that date is probably going to change, guys. That Saturday, July 18th is probably going to change. But DEI in library communities, misinformation in the information age, a whole bunch of stuff. You see, they're all at the same link. So I'm going through these pretty quickly. They're all at the same link to sign in. Templates for teachers will be in September. There's also a summer camp that's completely free for pre-K through 3rd grade children. So if that interests you, you can find more information on my website. It's not from me. It's from a company called Kids Academy. And it is a paid product, but you can get 60 days free. And if you sign up for it now, that includes the summer camp. Rethink Learning Summit by the amazing Nicole. Really nice, really interesting summit this summer, but it is a paid one. So I like to make sure you know that, but it's not, it's not a lot of money. And then BER is having some sessions on distance learning and on distance learning in the ELA classroom. Another free conference is Ed Change Global. It's an international 24-hour conference. Guys, it is so much fun. We've been doing this since 2015. You get so many like door prizes and information and games, and it's just a whole bunch of fun for 24 hours. We also have the United Ed Tech Conference, which is all about elevating people of color's voices in ed tech. So this is going to be another really good conference. I think it's like $12 and the money's being donated. So, I mean, come on. And then for free, the Indiana Connected Educators Conference. I am going to be speaking at this one of those days. It's on the website again, so you can sign up for that. At the end, we will do an evaluation. At the end, we will do an evaluation. That's the only thing we ask for these free sessions is for you to please give us some feedback, okay? I promise you I will post this link at the end, so you don't have to worry about this right now, but I like to tell you, just in case you're leaving early or something like that, you know, if you want the evaluation, just let me know. And you have it on the screen right now, so you can go ahead and get that information. All right, guys, so that is it for my announcements. So I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen and let Phoenicia take over. As I'm doing that, make sure that you are signing in if you would like to. What is the summit about? Kim, I don't know which summit you're talking about, but let me know in the chat and I will be able to answer your question. So I'm going to shut my face right now so you can Get what you came for. College access for all English learners. Take it away, Phoenicia.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm so glad that you signed up for this webinar. My name is Phoenicia Grant, and I am a counselor. I am currently a counselor and international transcript evaluator for DeKalb County School District, which is in Atlanta, Georgia. So I'll kind of tell you a little bit about my transcript evaluation story, how I got into this work. So I taught as an ESOL teacher for about 7 years before I went back to school to become a counselor. And when I graduated, I was hired as the full-time transcript evaluator because of my experience with the EL or English learner population. It was kind of like a marriage. So this position is kind of like a marriage between ESL and school counseling. But what I soon learned is nothing in my college program as a teacher or as a school counselor prepared me to evaluate foreign transcripts and add them to U.S. transcripts. I feel like that whole concept was just completely missed. So I fell in love with the work. I became very passionate about it. And as a result, I created a framework. I'm very involved with the American School Counselor Association and also the Teachers of English Speakers of Other Languages Association. So I frequently post in their forums, free lessons, free webinars, things of that nature. So if you're not a member of ASCA or TESOL, I definitely would say you should join. So who I've trained, we've trained counselors, teachers, ESOL directors, Title III coordinators, State Department personnel, principals, world language directors, parent liaisons, etc. This framework has been presented at several conferences at the state level, nationally, and internationally. So we are constantly trying to put the information out there to give counselors and educators the tools they need to do this work. And also, a little bit more about the presenter, because you always want to know who's the person standing in front of you giving you the information. So I published this transcript evaluation framework in 2016 in a magazine called Language Magazine. And we've also been contacted by REL, which stands for the Regional Educational Laboratory Northwest, which uses applied research to help practitioners and policymakers improve equitable outcomes for English learners. And this particular organization, REL Northwest, they conduct extensive research with Alaska, Idaho, Montana, Oregon, and Washington. So the most important thing that I want you to get from this actual framework and this presentation that we are providing today is you do the best with what you have and make sure that you are consistent. If you are consistent, that is going to substantially decrease your liability. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, so a little bit of overview of what we're going to discuss today. We're going to talk about how the data influenced the transcript evaluation and placement process. When I say placement, I'm referring to grade level placement. So you're going to have these students coming to you from other countries, and you need to be familiar, somewhat familiar with their educational system so that you can place them in the appropriate grade. We're also going to talk about comparing foreign education systems to our system in the United States. We're going to talk about creating standard operating procedures using your state laws and local board policies. And we're going to talk about how to apply the framework. And at the end, as Dr. Alexander said, we're going to do a Q&A at the end, and I'm also going to give you some free resources that are really good. Okay, so a little bit about the population. So the top 5 countries that students are coming from into the United States, number 1 is China, number 2 is India. Number 3 is South Korea, 4 Saudi Arabia, and 5 Canada. So most of our students are coming from these countries. And something I like to share about India, when I first started this work, I was very intimidated by families coming to me from India. I would get into cold sweats because I knew that it was going to be a confrontation, but not a negative confrontation, but just a completely different style of negotiation. So what I started doing is I started doing research on India because I said, in order for me to better serve my Indian population, I need to learn more about their culture. So I came across an article that talked about a test that students in India take in 10th grade. And it's called the secondary school exam. And based on this exam, the score that students earn in 10th grade at the end of this exam determines if they can go on to the upper level of high school or if they stop right there and start working. And what I realized also in the article is that more students commit suicide the day before those test results are announced. The test results are announced on the radio. So not only is it's going to determine your future, but it's also going to determine if your family is going to be shamed by your results. So just bringing in that counselor piece, I said, oh my goodness. So then I started watching documentaries on Netflix, Amazon Prime, I mean, just wherever I can find it. So what I will say is the more you learn about the students coming from these countries and the culture, the easier it will be to have those sometimes difficult conversations, because sometimes the counselor or the educator is the one giving out the bad news, because when students come to us, to our school district, they have an idea of what grade they're going to be in, what classes they're going to take, and sometimes the classes that they've taken in their country are not equivalent to the classes that we offer in our district. And I'll talk more about that as the presentation goes on. As it relates to the refugee population, most of the students are coming from a country called Myanmar. The previous name was Burma. And these students, most of them speak Burmese, but in this particular country, there are 200 languages. So it's very common to have students from the same country that cannot communicate to each other because they speak different languages. Of course, you have Iraq, Bhutan, Somalia, the Democratic Republic of Congo. You may be familiar with these if you have a large refugee population, but this is just giving you some more information. All right, so the top 10 languages. My district is very diverse. Our top language is Spanish. And so on the first column, that's DeKalb County School District. And on the second column, these are the top 10 languages in the United States. So as you can see, some of the languages that are the top in the United States are not necessarily the top languages in my particular school district. Same thing with Bengali. Most students that speak Bengali, they're coming from Bangladesh. So I had to do some research with Bangladesh as well, because I noticed that sometimes it seemed like the parents didn't want to talk to me. And as I started doing more research, it was because I was a female. So I started watching documentaries on Bangladesh, and one thing that I learned in one of the documentaries is that prostitution is legal. So I also learned that an ultrasound is illegal, because in this particular country, Bangladesh, if a woman finds out that she's having a girl, the probability of her having an abortion is like 15 to 20 times greater than if she wasn't having a girl. So I started thinking, how many students have we registered from Bangladesh that are female students? So it's little things like this, and not to say that, the documentaries and the articles, that everything is telling you what is true, but it just gives you another vantage point. And I think that, like I said, most importantly, get to know the students, read everything about the countries. The students coming into your district from other countries is kind of like the pulse of the world. So I feel like when I noticed that this year we had more students from Kuwait, something said, start doing research on Kuwait. Is something going on in Kuwait? A few years ago, we had an influx of students from Venezuela. Started doing research, and it was like, oh, okay, I see that what's going on politically, that is having an effect on why we're having more students coming from that country. Amharic, these are students that are from Ethiopia and Eritrea, Nepal. Most of our students from Nepal are refugees from Nepal or Bhutan. Arabic, this could be everywhere. Somalia, that's going to be Somalia. And Hindi, most of the students speaking Hindi are coming from India. So the main thing with the top languages is the language is associated with a country, but try to do research on the country to see what's going on with the student. It's very important. All right, so a little bit more about the demographics from where I serve. My school district is about 100,000 students. And out of those students, 24% of our students have a primary home language other than English. And the estimate is in 10 years, our school district will be 40%. 40% of our school district will be students who speak English that have a primary home language other than English. And we also have 3,585 refugee students. And this actually makes our school district the largest school district with a refugee population in the Southeast. So like I said, we're in Atlanta, Georgia, and we have the largest refugee population in the Southeast. And that is because we have 5 resettlement agencies. So like I said, this slide is just telling you we're very diverse. We have over 158 countries represented and over 166 languages in our district. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about the data. So what we did, and the data is a little bit old, but this is when we decided to make the change. The national graduation rate is about 82%. So in 2005, we began to disaggregate the data to look at how our transcript evaluation process affected graduation rates and course completion success rates. So what we were doing prior to 2015 is we were awarding core math credit for every student that had mathematics or math on their high school foreign transcript. But what we realized is by doing that, some of the students did not have the skills and content mastery to pass the 3rd and 4th level math. So for example, your algebra 2 or advanced algebra, your pre-calculus. So just because it said mathematics on the transcript didn't mean necessarily that the student had taken algebra and geometry, which was what was offered in our school district. So what we decided to do is we did some research and we found a math screener or math assessment. It is called W-RAT. It stands for the Wide Range Assessment Test. And what this test does, it has about 40 questions, and it takes, you give the students 15 minutes to complete this math assessment. At the end of the 15 minutes, you can determine what the grade equivalency is. So based on that assessment, it's just a quick snapshot. It's all computation, and it lets you know, is a student on a 9th grade level, a 5th grade level, a 12th grade level. It tells you the grade level from kindergarten all the way to college level. And we use this tool to determine if we're going to award elective math credit or core math credit. And since we started doing that, we've noticed that students are able to complete the math courses at a higher rate, and our graduation rate has gone up since this point. We're now at about 57%. And like I said before, I know it's a lot of information, but hold your questions to the end. Just put it in the chat, and at the end during the Q&A, I will go over anything, repeat anything, give you any resource. Definitely will do that. So a little bit more about my district, the programs that we have in place. So the screening tool that we use to determine if a student is going to receive ESOL is called the WIDA screener. Because we have such a large refugee population in our school, in our district, excuse me, we have something called a lab program, which is a middle school program for older students. Okay. So if we have a student with interrupted schooling, like let's say you have a 16-year-old and last grade they completed was third grade, instead of just placing that student in ninth grade, we have the option to place that student in seventh grade. And then the student would only be with older ELs in that same situation. So we would keep them in seventh grade, and then the next year they would go to eighth grade. And then we would transition them. After the 2 years, they would go into a ninth grade program, and we would chart out a plan for them to graduate. If they can graduate by 20, then they could go to a traditional school after those 2 years. If not, we have an alternative education agency that they can go to within our school district. And that particular school does not have an age limit. So that's one of the programs we have because of our population. All right, so this is what I like to call the wall of glory. This is a snapshot of about 32-inch binders with all of the research that we've done on all of the countries. In this library, we have case studies, resources, sample school records, and other pertinent information needed for evaluating foreign transcripts. So 7 years ago, well, eight years I've been doing this particular job now. 8 years ago, I started with one binder. And what I did is every time I evaluated a transcript, every time I did research on a country, I would add it to a binder. And I believe that if you start with one binder and you keep those samples of the transcripts that you do, it will help you out so much because you won't be starting over from scratch. All right, so now we're getting into what I call the meat and potatoes of the presentation. So what is an international education system? Basically, that just means how we separate our education system. In the United States, you have elementary, middle school, high school. Of course, in the United States, K through 5 is elementary, 6 through 8 is middle school, 9 through 12 is high school. However, if you may remember, maybe 25, 30 years ago, first grade through sixth grade was elementary, and seventh grade through ninth grade was middle school, and high school was only 3 years. Many countries are still using that system, that organizational chart, or their education system is still aligned to that. So what this particular chart does is it just shows you this is the US equivalent, and this is what the grade level is called in their country. The first column is in France. So in France, they're going to continue with kindergarten through sixth grade is elementary. And then seventh grade through ninth grade would be middle school. So what that means for us as high school counselors is that the third year of school in France is equivalent to the first year of high school in the United States. So sometimes, counselors have said, or educators have said, well, this student has a middle school transcript. But when we convert it over to the US equivalent, that third year of middle school is actually equivalent to ninth grade in the United States. So that's very important, because if you don't know the equivalency of the foreign education system, then that student may lose out on credit, which would, as a result, cause them to be in school much longer. And also, it's helpful to note that sometimes a school or a school district operates as the smallest recognized form of an education system. This means every school does not have like in the United States, you have a state Department of Education, then you have a United States Department of Education. Most countries outside of the US, their USED is the Ministry of Education for that country. But all schools do not operate under the Ministry of Education, all right? So that's similar to if you have a private school in the United States. They're not under the same requirements as a public school. So that's all that this is saying. All right, country categorization chart. What you'll also find is sometimes you'll have students coming from countries that are not a part of that education system, okay? Here's an example. A student coming from Jamaica, they are under the United Kingdom's education system, the UK. A student coming from India is also under the UK system. And then you have a student coming from Nigeria. They may have two different systems. One is the UK, which means they graduate at the end of 11th grade. And they may also have a United States system, which means they graduate at the end of 12th grade. That is very important. So what's important about that is knowing that the French system covers more than just France. The French system is Haiti, Senegal, Democratic Republic of Congo. You'll know because when you look at the transcript, it'll be in French. So that in itself would let you know they're under the French system. But the reason that I have this chart is so that you know that just because a school isn't located in France doesn't mean that they're not under that educational system. Also with this, there are a lot of schools that they name the school American International School. Let's say the school is in Honduras. In order for it to be a true American school, it has to be accredited by one of the accreditation agencies that we accept in our school district. So that could be SACS or Middle State College and Schools. But in order to be a true American school, it has to be accredited by one of the accreditation agencies that is accepted in your state, in your district. Because the school can name itself an international school, but that doesn't mean that that all of their credit is going to transfer over like a U.S. transfer. But most of the time, you can look at the language that will tell you what educational system the student is under. But like I said, most of the countries in the Caribbean, they're going to fall under the UK system, which means they graduate at the end of 11th grade. Okay, so countries where English is the instructional language. What's very important about this is that when we evaluate foreign transcripts, we award core English credits, so the required English, if the instructional language is English. Now, some countries are given, like Belize is the only English-speaking country in Central America. Rwanda, Australia, England, but sometimes, okay, you have countries that are split. If you notice that you have a transcript from Tanzania and the transcript is in French, that is an indicator that that particular school may not have an instructional language that is English if the transcript is in another language. But in order to receive the core English credit that we award, we require that either the website says that the instructional language is English, the school's website, or the transcript says, or the withdrawal form says that the medium of instruction is English. That is very important. They have to have proof. If we don't have it in our documentation, if it's another country that we don't have in our research, then they would have to show us proof of that. And also in this, we also have to acknowledge the Black English learners, the African American immigrant population. They often speak other languages. So we have to make sure that just because a student is coming from Nigeria and the instructional language is English, that does not mean that that student does not speak another language, like Yoruba. So that's very important as we think about, what classes we're going to award that student. just because the instructional language is English doesn't mean that that student doesn't know or speak another language. All right, so countries with a 10 or 11-year education system, this means they graduate at the end of 10th grade. We have a few for 10th grade and more for 11th grade, okay? The one that stands out to me is Jamaica. So in our state, and we'll talk more about the laws as we move through the presentation, but in our state, if a student has graduated high school or completed secondary school, they are not eligible to enroll in a traditional high school. That student is eligible for post-secondary options, which means military, college, vocational school, the world of work, but we cannot re-enroll them in our high school to graduate again. You can only graduate once. Even if the student is younger than 18. So when it comes to this, sometimes we've had parents that will say, I just want my student to learn English for 1 year, or they'll say, I want my student to go to the military, or they'll say, I want my student to be an in-state resident and therefore have cheaper tuition. But we default to the eligibility for enrollment law in our state. So every state that I've trained, they have either a compulsory age law that covers high school graduates, or they have an admissions law, like, you know, the guidelines for admission, or eligibility for enrollment. And I mean, I just want to say, out of the states that have been trained, Texas, California, New York, New Jersey, Louisiana, Tennessee, I mean, so many, too many to name. But out of the states that have been trained, when I researched their state laws and their local board policies, it's there. But sometimes the parents are hoping that you don't know, and they want their students to be enrolled even though they have graduated. So if that comes up, you definitely want to look at your board policy, look at your state law to see what your state says, because it may not be legal to enroll those students. And I have a great resource that I'm going to share that will tell you the document that the student should have when they graduate. Okay, so in my district, we do about 1,200 transcripts a year. These are some of the countries that we've evaluated in this picture of the earth. So some frequently asked questions. One, how long does it take to evaluate a foreign transcript? And what I'm going to say is it varies. It can take 45 minutes, or it can take several days to complete research and investigation. I had a transcript from Greece that was in Greek, and it took a couple of days because since it was in Greek, I was, I had to like transfer everything over word by word. So that took a while. Then I had to interview the student, and I had to contact the school. So it varies. Another frequently asked question, who is responsible for evaluating foreign transcripts? So some local education agencies or school systems, the counselor. Sometimes it's the ESOL director. Sometimes, so basically it varies by school district. But what I will say, the most important thing is not who is doing the work, but how the work is done. If it's being evaluated at the school level, meaning the counselors or the ESOL teacher is doing it, you just want to make sure that everybody in your school district is doing it the same way. Because what you don't want to have is a student at school A receives 10 credits or 10 units, but student at school B from the same country receives 4 units. Then you have a discrepancy, and you'd be surprised how many exceptions and special cases. And, I've trained people that have said, well, his mother was dying from cancer, or he really wanted to be, the coach was pressuring me and he wanted to be on the soccer team or the football team. So we follow the framework, no matter what the extenuating circumstances are. Consistency is key. If you're not consistent, no matter who is evaluating it, everyone has to adopt the same procedures or the same policy for doing the work. If not, you're going to have a liability issue because an unfair advantage has been created. So again, who evaluates is not as important as how transcripts are evaluated. That's the most important thing there. All right, so now let's talk about the procedures. We're going to talk about federal laws, state laws, district policies, and local board policies and guidelines. So the first thing that you want to do is you always operate within the parameters of federal and state law and local board policy. Some federal laws that impact transcript evaluation and placement. The compulsory age law. Every state has a law that age that students must enter school and an age that students can exit school without the parents, being charged and, truancy, getting involved, all that kind of stuff. So they're going to have like a start and end time. For our state is 6 to 16, but that number is going to look different based on your state. That's important. Some states are going to have a state law which talks about the seat time requirement or the hours of instruction. That is very important. Sometimes that is going to be covered in your local board policy under attendance. They'll tell you student must be present 83% of the school year to receive credit. Very important. Every state has an eligibility for enrollment or guidance for admission law. And this is going to give you guidance for enrollment of high school graduates if they can be enrolled, or the age of the student if the student can be enrolled. So all of those laws are very important. So if you're not familiar with those laws, I would say that maybe you should familiarize yourself with those laws because they're very important. Now, getting back to the procedures, what do we do? A translation should be verbatim without interpretation. The translation should not come from the parent. We've received transcripts that are like the grades are changed, to all A's and the notes are changed. So we recommend that the translation is verbatim and it doesn't come from the family, that there's some kind of stamp, seal, certification, something on it to say that someone is certifying this translation. Now, we met with our legal team because we were challenged on this. In the past, we had a parent to tell us, our school district, that we were responsible for translating their students' transcript. So we met with the chief legal officer in our school district, and what that officer said was, the transcript is something that the student brings to the school district. This is not information that the school district is sending to the parents. This is something they're coming to us with. So it's similar to being requesting to translate a birth certificate. We do not have to translate a transcript. We don't have to do that. Sometimes the charge could be $60 to $75 per page. Sometimes students turn in transcripts that are 20 pages or more. They might have a course description guide that's 60 pages in Dutch. So the ownership to provide an English translation is on the parent. With that being said, if we can use Google Translate, and I know that's going to make you cringe, but if we can use Google Translate, we do. The thing with the foreign transcript is you just have to be able to get the information. If it says, and I know I'm going to butcher it, if it says mathematica, you know that is mathematics. If it says, and that's Spanish, if it says, ciencia, you know that that is science. And I know I'm not pronouncing it correctly, but you get my drift. So if we can use a translation tool that we have to our disposal, we do that as a service to the parents. But if we cannot, like if it's in Burmese, a script language, and we can't do it, then the ownership to provide an English translation is on the parent. In our school district, we do not award more than 8 credits. That's our max, right? So you're going to have some students from, like, for example, Afghanistan, that'll have 16 classes on a transcript. And the parent will say, I want them to get all 16 credits. Well, we can't give you 16 credits because in our school year, students can only earn a max of 8 credits during the school day. Now, of course, parents can pay for additional classes. They can pay for 2 extra credits. But for our school district, we will only transfer in what our students can earn in one school day. We award midpoint grades. So for our school district, a 90 to 100 is an A. So if we have a foreign transcript and the student has a letter grade of an A, we will give them a midpoint grade of a 95. So what I would suggest is, so you don't get caught up with awarding all these different numerical grades, come up with a scale, possibly the same scale that you use for U.S. transfers. Like if a student comes from Florida and a 50 is a F, but your state of 50 is, if a 50 is a D in Florida, but in your state a 50 is an F, then you would just want to make sure that you're assigning the same letter grade equivalent. All right. So a D in one country is going to be a D in the next country. So for us, 95 is an A, 85 is a B, 75 is a C, 70 is a D, and 69 is an F. We always award the highest F that the student can earn. Even if they earned a 12 in their country, we're going to transfer over 69. That's for everybody. No matter what country, 69 is the lowest F you can get. All right. Next, interview the student. Use available resources, compare with state course descriptions. Usually this is available in the State Department of Education. And be mindful that sometimes a syllabus and a course description guide do not exist. You're going to see mathematics on the transcript. What I do, what makes it easy, plug it in. If in 9th grade your district awards algebra, and their transcript says mathematics, give the student algebra. However, if your school district awards algebra, but the transcript says trigonometry, that's the only course that student can get. You cannot change the trigonometry into algebra to fit what the student would have earned in your district. Now, if it's general and it's generic, then you have more flexibility. But if it says on the transcript, trigonometry, that's what the student has to receive. That's very key. All right, so we're getting close to the end of the presentation. So let's talk more about the do's and the don'ts. So here you see a picture of all the things that I love to do. I love my family. I love to Netflix and chill. I love having a home, and I love my certification, and I like to travel. So if you love, if you can, think of these things that you love as you do this process, it'll help you out a lot, because it'll remind you of sticking to the framework and being consistent so that you don't lose any of these things. And like I said, as much as you want to help a student, think there's a possibility that the student may not graduate from your district. And when that student transfers to another district, everything that was done before, everything that you did could be called into question. We've been audited by colleges for foreign transcripts. We've been audited by the USED. We've been audited by the Office of Civil Rights. We've been audited by our State Department of Education. And what I can tell you is, based on our framework, because we apply the framework to every country, every student, we have been able to avoid all liability claims against our school district. So I'm very happy about that. Like I said, following the framework, being consistent and thorough helps you avoid lawsuits. So definitely you want to do that. So the skills you need to do this work, you need to be a good researcher. You need to investigate when something doesn't make sense. You need to be able to analyze the information that you're receiving. You need to be able to collaborate with different departments. I can't tell you how often I'm contacting the CTAE department, curriculum and instruction, athletics. Yeah, we're in collaboration with all of them. Be consistent, be thorough, and sometimes be creative. So things also that you want to do, determine if the educational system is on an annual, biannual, or quarterly trimester system. Determine if you can combine classes. Like if the student has biology and chemistry, you can possibly combine those to award one unit of one or the other. And this is because students in other countries, typically they take biology, physics, and chemistry every year. They don't take the entire class like us. You come to ninth grade in my district, we give you the entire course of biology. But in other countries, they're taking that first part of biology. Then 10th grade, they'll take the second part. Then 11th grade, they'll take the third part. So it actually takes them 3 years to complete that course. So they're taking like fragments of science. If that makes any sense. So because of that, we can't combine sciences to award one full unit of science credit. Award English credit if the instructional language in the country is English. That's our recommendation. If you can, give a math assessment to determine if the student's math level is high enough to receive high school credit. In our district, you have to have an 8.0 to receive the math credit, meaning you have to at least be on an 8th grade level. All right, things you don't want to do, okay? So you see the bars there and you see the certification is like gone. So don't risk your certification or freedom by giving students an unfair advantage. I don't have to tell you this because you know it. You're doing it already. But the reason I say this is you may be familiar with the scandal in Atlanta where educators went to prison for changing test scores. Well, foreign transcripts are no different. We cannot help a student today and hurt them tomorrow, because although we plan for them to graduate in our school district, as I've already said, sometimes students transfer, and when they do, what we do is going to be questioned. I know a counselor that I used to work with that was being pressured by a coach, and as a result, the counselor altered the evaluation that was completed by our department and awarded more credit for the student. When MIS, which is our information system department, when they noticed that the student earned 14 credits in one school year, they immediately questioned it, and it started an investigation, and that counselor was unfortunately let go. So what I would say is this, it's just not worth it. I just go back to my Netflix and chill, and I'm just not going to be able to do it. All right, so things that you don't want to do, don't award credit for American government, civics, U.S. history, health, economics, American literature. Anything that says American needs to be taught in your district in the United States, or be from a school accredited by one of the accreditation agencies that you accept. Other than that, most countries are teaching the history of that country, not American history, not American literature. Don't award credit if the students spend less than 4 hours per week in a class. That's kind of like the minimum that we've noticed. Don't award credit to more than one math or science course per year, because usually they don't have enough seat time in that second class. And don't award English core credit or required credit to students who took English as a second language. So if students are taking English the way that we take Latin, French, German here in the US, Japanese, they're taking it as a foreign language or a world language, we are not going to award core or required English. All right, so now we're getting into the framework. Most important questions. If you cannot answer these questions, you cannot evaluate a foreign transcript. Questions are, number one, what school year did the student attend or complete, and what is the U.S. equivalent school year? Number two, what country did the student attend, what country did the student attend school? Sometimes the country is not going to be on there. You'll just see like the city or the state. So you'll need to do a little bit of Google searching to find out what country that was. What grade level did the student complete? And that is why the chart that I showed you before is so important. What is the grading scale? Most of the time, the grading scale is not going to be on the transcript. So I'm going to give you some free resources to find grading scales and US equivalents. So I got you covered there. Can the courses be converted into your state's curriculum? Okay, so if you have a student that has basket weaving on their transcript, do you have an equivalent course? If so, what is it? Make sure you have that equivalent course. And the last but not least, how many hours per week did the student attend each class? So this is the framework. If you cannot answer these questions, you cannot evaluate the transcript. This is how you start evaluating the transcript. If one of the questions cannot be answered, you would need to go back to the student and say, hey, the country is not on the transcript. There is no city, there is no state. The school doesn't have a website. So we need another transcript with the country on the transcript so that we can verify that we're using the appropriate education system and the appropriate grading scale. If you can, screenshot this slide, and you also have a copy of the PowerPoint.
Phoenicia, I'm going to step in and ask you a couple of questions that we have.
Yes.
Okay, so one is, in the beginning, you talked about two associations. I think it was ASCA and maybe ESCO.
Yes.
ESOL. What are those two acronyms?
It's American School Counselor Association, and that is the National Association for School Counselors.
Okay, and what was the second one?
The second one is TESOL, which is the National Association for Teachers of English Speakers of Other Languages. So it's TESOL. So if you have English learners in your building, that association is key. Lots of good information there. And ASCA, anyone that is involved in counseling, I would highly recommend being a part of the National Association.
Okay, next question. The W-RAT, is that administered in students' home languages?
No, it is administered in English, and it stands for the Wide Range Assessment Test.
Okay, next question. How are school years placed on transcripts when students enroll? Some countries, year is February to December. Would this be for U.S. school 2019 through 20 or 2018 through 19?
Okay, so if the school year is, let's say, February 19 until December 19, the student is actually starting in the 18-19 school year of the United States, because they're actually starting second semester of the 18-19 school year. So you always roll it back. If you just see 2019, you roll that back to 18-19 school year, because they're starting mid-year.
Can you repeat how you award English credit again?
Yes, English credit, we have to have the instructional language has to be English. So we have a list of countries where the instructional language is English. And if the student is coming from one of those countries, then we would award core English credit.
So if they took English in their country as a second language, what type of credit would you issue?
An elective English credit.
When a student transfers into your high school from a different country, do they automatically meet the foreign language requirement?
That depends on the state. In my state, they would need to provide 2 years of foreign language on a high school transcript to get world language credit. However, some states have an assessment that they give students, and that's how they kind of test to give them, to make sure that they're literate in the language.
Okay, next. So if we don't award foreign English credit and they need 4 credits of English to graduate, we are essentially keeping them in school for 4 years, and they might be too old for them to stay in school.
That varies per state. And that is an argument. Like I said, this is a recommendation. But the most important thing is we want them to graduate in 4 years, right? But we can't give them credit for a course that's not equivalent. If that, and I'm saying, when I say we, I'm telling you what we do in our district. But there are some states that I've trained that they will award core English credit, even when the student, I mean, they don't speak any English at all, but they have English on their transcript. So I would say contact your ESOL department to see if maybe they could use that screening tool to assist.
Next question, and I did put the evaluation link in the chat, guys. Next question, how do you determine the number of course hours if the transcripts do not have these? And thank you for the clarity of your presentation.
You are very welcome. There is, and this is the activity, so everybody already has the activity. There is a website called the World Education System, and that particular website, it has about maybe 90% of the hours per week. World data on education, I'm sorry, world data on education. You click on the country and it tells you how many hours that the student has been in school.
And that is it for questions. Can you just tell us quickly about the activity so they can do it on their own, your resources, and how to contact you, because we are over time.
I know, I'm so sorry. So this activity was just a scavenger hunt, and what you would do with this activity, I'm so sorry that we ran out of time. I probably got carried away with my stories, but
please don't be sorry. It's good information.
Thanks. So in this particular activity, this is an example of a transcript from Mexico. And what you would do is you would look to see if you could answer these questions. So if the student, you're thinking, if the student walked through your office and they gave you this transcript, do you have enough information on just this transcript to evaluate it? So it's kind of training your eyes to start looking for the essential information in the transcript. And then on the slide after those essential questions, this is showing you where the answers are. And that was the activity. And then this slide, these are just all great free resources that are available to you. I mean, I can commend some school districts like Rhode Island, Florida, California. There are several states that have already created handbooks to help counselors with evaluating transcripts, but most states have not. And I'm still working with Georgia to see if we could create something. This is my information. I have a website here, and if you want to send me an email, if you need more information about the framework or any of the services that are available, you can please feel free to send me an email. But like I said, there's my website there and there's my email information. But just going back to the free resources, I mean, if you just screenshot this is enough to get you started. But if you want more information, definitely info@internationaltranscripts.com or www.internationaltranscripts.com will give you more information. And I mean, I blog on there quite a bit. Whenever I learn something new about a country, I just kind of do a blog, or it's a lot of good information on there. So yeah, that's all I have.
Thank you so much. We do have 2 questions. But guys, the evaluation is in the chat. So once you do the evaluation, of course, thank you so much for coming. We appreciate it. Sign up for more sessions. If you want to hang out with us for a couple more minutes and get questions answered, we are happy to do that. But if you need to go, of course, we understand. We want to make sure that we respect your time. So before I ask the last couple of questions, I just want to give a huge thank you to Phoenicia L. Grant for doing this, because I mean, this is one, if she didn't show up, I could not help you. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise. I really do appreciate it. She contacted me, guys, she wanted to share this with you, and that for free. I mean, please give her some evaluation. Like, please do the evaluation. It was just so kind of her to come here and share this, and put some love in the chat. She will get a copy of the chat. Put some love in the chat. We really, really, really appreciate you doing this for free, because I know districts pay you to come and do this. So thank you so much.
No worries. I mean, you have to, I'm happy to give back.
Okay, well, I'm going to keep the recording going just to answer some of these questions. So
Okay.
one is, do you have several examples of transcripts that we can see with the way credits have been translated?
Yes. Send me an email and I'll send it to you. Because I would, obviously with FERPA, I have to block out student names and things of that nature. But yes, I have sample transcripts, because some districts contact me to evaluate their transcripts. So I definitely have it, but you have to send me an email so I can, like I said, black out all the student information.
And is your email on your, oh, it's right there, info@, reading is fundamental. Okay. Do you have a link to the California handbook? I am an international counselor in California, but have not seen that handbook.
I don't have a direct link, but if you send me an email, I can send it to you.
And then it's a lot of thank yous.
Oh, thank you.
Let's see, where's the evaluation? Christina, I am posting it right now. It's number 1 on the list, Christina. Okay, and then let's see, I want to make sure I'm not missing anybody's question. A lot of things. I have to go through all of these thank yous. Thank you.
It's a good problem to have.
Oh, a lot of like, you're wonderful. Oh, so awesome. Okay. Okay, I don't see any other questions. So guys, if you have any other question, please go ahead and throw it in the chat now and let us know. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again with the evaluation. If I can get to the little button, if Zoom would move. Thank you, Zoom. Okay, so here's the evaluation link. It's also, I'm throwing it in the chat again. So Phoenicia, again, seriously, thank you so very, very, very much.
Thank you so much for having me.